Okay, well, welcome to Krisjan Radio. Thanks for being here, everybody. I'm joined today by my good friend TJ Sayles. TJ is an entrepreneur's entrepreneur, owning restaurants and building stuff, and just being who he is, man. So TJ, how are you?
I'm great.
Good. So before we get going, man, like I said, you own restaurants and you're a carpenter and a construction guy, and you don't work for anybody, which is badass. So right now, obviously, is a pretty rough time to be in the restaurant biz.
Yes, it is.
How's everything, man? Are you surviving?
Yeah, we're surviving. Our businesses we're pretty healthy, and we are pretty strategic about how we keep cash on hand and spend money. But it's been pretty rough. In particular, the new place we opened, Matlack's, down on Front Street. We were really holding out for tree for it to kind of like get us some cash flow and, really be set up and not having that. And also not having regulars that kind of support you through takeout or delivery or, kind of stuff.
Totally.
It just
that seems like the worst timing. Like you spent all that time like redoing it and getting it going. And like right as soon as you guys opened, this happened and you were closed.
Yeah. I mean, my wife and I have a pretty big stake in it, and our partner from Seattle has a big stake, and then Justin here, who owned Pre-Funk, I mean, he's got a slice, and it was a real gut punch. But I mean, I'm kind of like I don't know, there's like all those stages of grief, and I was really upset, really sad, then I was mad, and then you accept it, and
now you're just accepting it.
So Northend Pizza is still hanging in there and selling pizza to go out the window, which has allowed us to keep a couple salary people on staff and actually bring a couple hourly folks back in.
Cool.
Prost has been tough because, we're a draft beer place, but we've been opening on Wednesdays and Saturdays from like 1 to 5 and doing bratwurst sandwiches, beers, and we sanitize quart jars and sell that.
Yeah,
so
cool.
But it's been rough.
I can only imagine. And and you guys just had a baby too.
Yeah, March 9th, we had a baby girl. So, the week after we laid off 60 employees, and, I listened to this guy, Tom Cockley?
Mm-mm.
He's a restaurateur. He's kind of affiliated with like Danny Meyer a little bit out of New York. And he was on NPR talking about the bailout. And, like any small business, a restaurant and bar especially it's a little family, and
totally.
To let people go and know they're gonna have a hard time making it on unemployment if they can get signed up, and it's pretty emotional week.
I can't even imagine, man. Yeah, we've been fortunate where we haven't had to lay anybody off. Like we still have projects coming in, and we had signed a bunch of stuff right before this happened, so we have stuff to carry us through for a while, but there's definitely a lot of there's some, but not a ton of new stuff coming in for sure.
Yeah, I wasn't as prepared as I could be. I was planning on kind of being on paternity leave a little bit, and I was kind of resetting construction-wise, like trying to figure out, as we've talked about before, like what I'm trying to do. And I just wanted to try to enjoy doing some projects around the house and having the baby, but
totally.
I kind of had to jump back into some projects that luckily were there, some little stuff that just to get some cash flow.
Totally.
Because as you know, it takes a while to get those things. I mean, the project I worked on today, I've been working on to get set up since, 1st of December.
Oh, wow.
So it takes a while.
Yeah. Nothing in our industry, in that industry, man, nothing happens fast. Like, even when we sign a project, it's weeks and months sometimes until like we find everything we need and we can start and everybody's good. And nothing happens overnight for sure.
So anyway, that's kind of what I'm up to, man. It's just, I've got a couple little carpentry projects. I'm trying to line up some other stuff and just trying to bring some cash flow in. And now that we did receive one of the grants, I believe, for the Matlack's is too new, so it doesn't get fund. It can't, for whatever reason, it can't qualify, which is a real heartbreaker. But the other places got the EIDL grant or whatever, and I'm just hoping. The flip side is that when you open back up, you can't. If they restrict our occupancy, that's going to be a challenge as well, because the occupancy, half occupancy is not, I don't have half bills and half rent and half.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. What restaurant ever thinks like, gosh, how can we get less people in here and be smaller? Like, that's not how that works.
It's not how that works.
No. Oh.
And so I don't know, man.
My heart goes out to you, man. That's crazy, dude. You know, I'm here to help however I can, man.
Well, that's my thing. I'm just trying to network right now. And, you know, I've reached out to a couple other, you know, my thing is like, because of my other businesses, I don't really, having a normal 9-to-5 job is pretty tough for me.
Totally.
But luckily, or you know, and I have different thoughts on this, but residential construction here especially is very subcontractor driven. And so I'm just trying to network out to people who, like you guys, have got things on the books and just need skilled labor.
Yep.
And I'm hoping that the market doesn't get flooded with people who are getting laid off as the economy craters and it becomes more competitive. So I'm trying to network now to lock things up.
I hadn't really thought of that. That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, people get laid off and cool. I'll be a construction guy now, or I'll start my own construction company now.
Well, for $35 and a $1,200 insurance policy, you're a contractor.
Yeah.
Whether you should be or not. And so
crazy.
So, and then a lot of people they'll get taken advantage of in 1099, and it's pretty cutthroat out there. So that's what I'm trying to do now. I like to stay busy. It keeps me positive. So
yeah. Crazy.
That's the plan.
So, a couple months ago when we were talking, you know, and we did that article in the Constructivist, there was a bunch of stuff that we talked about and the reason I wanted to have you back on and do this is to talk about more of the sustainability, you know, the sustainable construction and stuff we were talking about. Cause I know that's stuff that you're super passionate about. And a lot of the stuff that you told me was stuff that I'd never heard of before. Like, I mean, I'm in the industry for sure, but you talked about stuff, man, that I had no idea. Like there's different mortgages and loans for sustainable houses, like green loans or whatever, right?
Well, the energy efficient mortgage, you know, and I'm not a lending expert, but there are mechanisms out there that I think I've never heard of being used here. And I've talked to a couple other pretty established builders that have never heard of it either.
Yeah.
Because the reality is now is you're making these houses more efficient. You know, if you have a 5,000 square foot house, you know, with a heated RV garage and all, you know, all that stuff, you can't just slap solar on it and call it good. But if you really design your house, I mean, you can, but like you're still I'll be interested to see what happens with natural gas prices too. Like, I'm not an energy expert, but now that oil is zero, like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I don't know if those two intersect or how they intersect or how that works, but yeah, that could be really crazy.
What I would say is that just sort of my personal opinion, and this is just my thought, is that construction is really dominated by banking and real estate more than it is, you know, by builders.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So, like, when I have my house appraised, I'm trying to refinance my house before all this shitstorm, and you know, the appraiser comes to my house and he's like, man, this house is great. You've remodeled it. I'm shooting for a net zero remodel of a bench house. But he's like, I can't give you credit or any like extra money for the extra insulation you've done, the thermal bridging you've stopped, the zero VOC finishes you've used, or your solar array. Like, I have to base it on what's sold around you, which our houses built in the 50s and 60s code, you know, to that code, or, you know, so you don't really get any incentive. So you got to really want it. And so I think part of it is telling people, like, so people that get the big picture of like, you know, I'm basically prepaying my energy bill. It's two parts, I think. Like I said before, the energy thing is about a lifestyle choice. You know, that's something I choose to do by having solar power and to try to reduce my carbon footprint in my home.
Yep.
And then regardless of what the government or the bank or anybody else says, it's just the right thing to do for me.
Yeah.
And it'd be nice if there was a little more support at the city level or at the banking financial level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, that blows my mind that somebody that would come appraise your house, they can't see or justify your house appraising for more because of stuff like that. That seems crazy.
Yeah. Well, I paid $400 last year for power, and my house is all electric. And they're like, yeah, but if I paid $200 a month in power for my air conditioning in the summer,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like
how is that not more valuable? Like that makes no sense. So what's the solution to that? I mean, is it obviously it's the banking, like I said, the banking industry or whatever. Like,
well, I think you need to get some mortgage. You need to get a mortgage broker or a lender on your show and ask them, because,
yeah,
like I said, I'm just a construction guy, but I try to pay enough attention, and I've just heard little snippets of that, but I haven't found anyone to discuss it with or that's heard of it really beyond anecdotally here in town.
Huh. Well, I'm going to work on that. I know some mortgage people for sure. And I'm gonna get some answers to that, man, because that's super interesting.
I thought about maybe, I don't know what your reach is at the show, but should I say like really inflammatory, polarizing things? And then you'll get some feedback, and people.
That's what gets people talking. That's what makes shit go viral, right? I mean, if you're just vanilla about stuff, man, nobody cares. But if you take a stand and say some controversial shit, like that's what gets people's attention. So, what you want, man?
Right?
So I'd say how you feel, yeah.
I mean, like I said, ultimately, it's got to be a personal choice. And then I think you can make the case for the economics of it in a lot of ways after the fact. And, the market never rewards people at the leading edge. You know what I mean? Like in a lot of ways until after it's established.
Right. Yeah. And until you're on to the next, 3 things after that. It just takes a while to catch up. Yeah. Yeah. That's super.
Like the main thing is just, I don't know, like the status quo gets to become very comfortable, and when you base your business, your life around it, then you're not that motivated to change it. And then I think a lot of people, everyone's guilty of getting in their ruts, and like we talked about before, like, doing continuing education, like reading about stuff, like, reading about what people are doing in Connecticut or Massachusetts or, Rhode Island, where they pay a ton of money for heating and cooling costs because they don't have hydropower.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
That's like the West Coast thing, is like we have dams.
Yeah.
So our power is
pretty cheap. Yeah.
But if you were paying for heating oil,
sure,
or propane in the Northeast, that's what drove all that back in the 70s to start all that, is because they had
that's how most people heat their houses, with super expensive electricity or oil or propane.
Well, and they get their electricity from a coal-fired power plant.
Sure.
So like I grew up in Tennessee Valley, TVA. They have nuclear powered power plants, which, whatever, I'm not going to get into that. But then they have coal-fired power plants. And, at some point, you got to make a stand about like, I'm not trying to be perfect. Just trying to do the best I can. And so you start making these decisions of like, I don't really want to be part of that. Or like, for me, fracking, I'm trying not to have I don't have natural gas in my house, because it's not that I'm judging people that do, but for me, I'm trying to like say, hey, I know that fracking has a lot of bad side effects, and like, we don't really need it for our houses. If we just design them better,
sure,
and differently, then we wouldn't need that stuff.
Well, so let's talk about that, because that's super interesting. Because I mean, the way, especially where we live, like you buy a house that has natural gas, any subdivision you see going up, they've got all the gas meters stubbed up. I mean, that's how stuff is built. So I think conventional knowledge is like, well, you have to have it, and you just said you don't have to have it. So talk. You don't. That. Talk about that, man. Tell me about that.
Okay, well, so now, I mean, the big movement is like, obviously fracking, and you want to get like, that level of it. But the thing is, natural gas is quite cheap. And, again, if you have a huge house and insulated very well, it's insulated to your code minimum standard.
Yeah.
You're going to just blast that, your 85% efficiency, 92% efficiency heater. And that's what all the HVAC techs are. They just put a big old furnace in there and you fire that thing up. They always put it in the garage, which I think is weird, because it just sucks in all the crap from your garage into your house.
Right.
So then you put this furnace in, and then people are like, well, I got to have a gas stove. I just can't cook without a gas, stove.
Yeah.
And, for some people, it's a real aesthetic thing.
Okay.
You know, and you have to have a gas water heater because everyone knows how expensive it can be to have a electric hot water heater. So you start adding these things up, and then gas becomes the cheapest choice.
Sure.
But if you say to yourself, okay, well, man, I'm going to build this house. It's going to be have this really tight air envelope. The last thing I want to do is have, I mean, you know, now you have to have CO2 meters in your house because you can poison yourself with carbon monoxide from combustion in your home. So then you say to yourself, you know, I got to have the gas furnace. I got to have the gas heater because I have this huge house and I got 5 kids and I got 4 showers and all these different things. And like, it's hard to keep up with electric that way competitively. But if you're able to have the means to design your own home, you can design it in a way that, you know, you make a tighter envelope for your house. It's more efficient. And then you can start playing with that and saying like, well, I could use an air source heat pump hot water heater. You know, they're expensive, but you can do that. And if you're like, I'm going to be in this house for 20 years, you can make that math. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then you start saying like, hey, you know, chefs all over the world use induction burners. Like if the French Laundry can use an induction burner for their restaurant, I'm pretty sure it's okay for you too.
It's right for me to make pancakes with it in my house.
Yeah. And so then you get into that, and then you're like, I mean, having the induction range has been a real game changer for us because, you know, having little kids, it doesn't get hot and it doesn't heat your house up.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
So like, have you ever used an induction burner?
No, dude, I know. I never have.
They're badass. Like, I'm not a scientist. I don't know exactly how it works, but somehow it inducts heat real freaking fast into your, like, you can boil a pot of water like that. It's insane.
Crazy.
And so you get into that. I mean, we have a heat pump water heater. I have just a traditional air source heat pump that goes in the house. It's not the greatest, but, you know, but if no one tells you these options, and then you can say, like, boom, all of a sudden now I have all these electric appliances, and then I can incorporate my solar array. Now you're talking about like a whole package, right?
Sure,
versus like, oh, I have this huge house and I want to get solar because I believe in it and it seems like the right thing to do. And I do have expensive electrical bills because my house is inefficient.
Yeah.
You know, and then you're like, I'm going to spend 50 grand or whatever on a solar array. It's going to take me 30 years to pay off. But if you just take a couple steps back and design your house to like not need that much energy.
Yeah.
Right? You've saved that. And that's, to me, if you have the means to design your own home, I just can't understand why someone wouldn't do that unless, you know.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
does that make sense?
Because most times nobody's giving them those options.
Right.
That's so crazy.
Some people don't care. Some people just don't, you know, they just don't want to, you know, I think there's a little generational aspect sometimes. And then I think some people are so motivated by like the price right in front of their face, and they're not looking at the price down the road.
We deal with that every single day. Yeah. For sure. Oh, that's too expensive. I'm not doing it. But yeah.
So yeah, man, that was kind of my thing. And I just started really looking at it. And I just think there's, you know, opportunity to like I was saying before we met, like to live your values. If you really, your values tell you that you're not, even if you don't have to be an expert, like I'm not an expert, but like I'm pretty sure that pumping hydraulic fluid into like aquifers that take thousands of years to fill up, it's probably not a good idea for like 10 people to make a shit ton of money off of it.
Absolutely.
Right? Absolutely. Versus like hiring the solar guys who employ a company and like, yeah, sure, they make the panels, maybe they're made in China or whatever, but like I'm gonna have that forever. Like the panels are warranted for 25 years.
Yeah.
And no one, you know, technically no one really got hurt in the making of this, you know what I mean?
Totally.
And that's a big thing too, I think, is just the notion of energy as it's controlled by, like, you know, if you want natural gas, you only got one company.
Yeah. It's a full-on monopoly.
Yeah, and so if you want power, there's only one company.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you buy it from them or you make your own.
Correct. So and they definitely don't want it to get any cheaper because that's scary to them.
Of course they don't. And that always like just is so bizarre to me. Where, well, like I say, yeah, they're the only ones, and they make it seem like it doesn't matter if it's Idaho Power or whatever power company around the country. Hear the same stuff, and how they're protecting the people or whatever. Of course they're not. They're a huge corporation and they're trying to protect them making money.
Yeah,
of course they are.
Well, again, I'm not an energy expert, but I know that it just at the gut level just seems sort of like, really, like it's just not necessary, and like it's not for everyone. There's plenty of people who don't really care, and they just want to come home and make dinner and play with the kids, and they don't care, and that's fine. But it would be nice to connect with people, whether they're design professionals or clients, or I feel like the city of Boise has some opportunities to do some cool stuff if they chose.
Yeah.
As far as
what could the city of Boise do that they're not already doing?
Well, I just saw they had this the mayor, who I don't know personally, but they released this. Her big thing was the first 100 days. Like, what are you going to do? And I just saw it today. It came in my email, the housing report about how they're going to do. And the city's main focus is about homelessness, which is a real concern.
Absolutely.
But I think that they've built some housing here for people like, what's the one down there on, by where the new police station is?
Adair, I think it's called.
No, there's that one, but there's the one I toured it.
The New Path? Is it New Path?
Yes. So there you go. It's a cool building, but like if you just, I think if you just take it one step further and be like, okay, the city's gonna get all this money from wherever they get their money from.
Yeah.
But like if you could take it one step further, like what they do in Portland or Seattle, where it's like, hey, we're gonna build this housing, we're gonna government finance it and make it whatever, but we're also gonna make it net zero ready.
Yeah.
Or carbon neutral. You know what I mean? Like taking that phase versus just taking like the conventional way because it's cheaper and everyone can on the front end. Yeah. And then just kind of putting that out. So I think that's where, the city could lead a little bit more, or incentivizing more like, hey, if you're going to make a net zero ready house, you don't have to pay all the fees or something, you know what I mean? To make a little carrot out there.
Absolutely.
Because, right now it just seems to be just sort of geared towards the same old. And like, we need more housing.
Absolutely.
And the single family home's not going to go away. People, especially people in Idaho, it's cool living in an apartment, but I don't know, man, the single family home is going to be around for a little while.
Yeah. I don't know anybody that would rather, given a choice, would rather live in an apartment type situation than I'm not giving up my basement. Yeah, no way. My basement.
Yeah. So I think in the short, I don't know, especially like that's why I think the ADU thing now is a big deal.
Totally.
I'm really interested in accessory dwelling units because again, you have this opportunity to make this really tight, functional, efficient space.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then infill too, like urban infill with row housing or whatever. Like anytime you have a shared wall, I think is a really good opportunity to save money and energy.
Sure.
So
on that, it doesn't have to be a full multi-fam thing. It can be condos or townhouses, townhouse or whatever, where it's 2 units that share the one wall.
Yeah.
So in that kind of scenario, and I know though, and there's a lot of those going up right now. What like, I don't know, but like, what do you do? What is that shared wall like? What do you do to share energy or save energy that way?
I'm not a multifamily expert, but when you're sharing walls, you don't have an exterior wall there.
Right.
And if you're sharing a couple walls, let's say you're in townhomes back to back to back, you might be sharing 3 walls with someone else.
Sure.
That's super efficient, right? You don't need as much, you're not losing as much to the outside air.
Sure.
And, again, there's people, I'm not an expert at this, but it's just kind of common sense. If people are interested, or if you're interested, there's a company called Green Hammer over in Portland. And they're building these insane, net zero ready, multifamily housing facilities. They're building senior care facilities, and there's gorgeous designs, super cool. I know they have a little bit different market than us, and I get that, but they're doing it, and they've already figured all that out. They've figured out all the modeling of what to do.
Sure.
Do you see what I'm saying? So it's easy to quantify, to be like, we did, and here's what it costs. Yeah. We'll tell you. and then make it work.
Yeah. So you said a couple times net zero ready. What I think I know what that means, but what does that mean?
It's basically like over the course of the year, all the energy that you're going to use, you'll produce on site.
Yeah.
So net zero ready basically means they're not paying for the solar panels yet. And then when you move in, you can buy your own solar panels. That's okay. But the main thing would be there's like zero energy or like a passive type house that doesn't use anything other than what it produces all the time. Whereas net zero usually relies on what you call it, net metering. So like my house, I don't make enough power in the wintertime to be able to, I don't generate enough energy with my solar to pay for my heating, right?
Sure. Yep.
But I make way more than I need in the summertime. That Idaho Power allows me to net meter. The meter goes backwards, and they give me credit for that.
Nice.
And so that's how you can make it work.
Cool. And so yeah, so like you said, you live in
net zero.
Totally. And so you live in a 1950s house, and you've done a bunch of these upgrades to an old house. So you don't have to design a brand new house to do a lot of the stuff you're talking about.
No. Nope.
So
I mean, like you can get into like energy modeling, and like I'm just doing it like bootstrap style, just reading articles, reading books, going to conferences.
Yeah.
Just trying to see what happens. Like,
sure.
There's some stuff now that I've done I would have done differently.
Yeah.
But and money's a factor too. Like I'm just carpenter guy. I don't have like endless resources.
Totally. Well, so and for me, I mean, for somebody it's at some point they're not, who knows, and they're not too terribly distant future. At some point, we're going to do a pretty substantial remodel at my house here, and and so for me to work with somebody like you who's tried some of this stuff and like I said, learns about it and studies it, like of course that's who I would rather work with than somebody that hasn't, obviously. So
right.
What is, so as somebody who would, who's maybe thinking about remodeling an old house or even a fairly new house to do some of this stuff, what is like kind of the triage? Like what do you start looking at first? Like you know what I mean? Like how do you start thinking about this?
I would say the first thing that you got to think about the stuff that's not very sexy. I mean, people want to think about what kind of cabinets they're going to get and their countertop, and I'm going to get tile. They think about finishes, which are super expensive.
Yeah.
But to me, the number one thing, depending on the scope of your remodel, would be the envelope of your house.
Okay.
And that comes down to, the envelope, your roof, your walls. You can't do much about the basement necessarily in every situation, but that's like the first thing, because that's like the cheapest way to save money in terms of energy, because insulation is pretty cheap.
Sure.
Right. And then after that, it gets into, you kind of can balance out like your systems, which is, basically your heating and cooling. Mm-hmm. Depending on what kind of house you build, you can eliminate heating and cooling and have a passive house.
Yeah.
It'd be hard to remodel that way, but you can do it.
It can be done. Yeah.
But the biggest thing I think would be to tighten that up, and then to add more efficient systems, whether it's your HVAC system, like doing the air source heat pump, or even just if you really want gas, like going to like the most efficient furnace you can get, and these aren't the cheapest things.
Totally.
And then your wiring, making sure, your wiring's up to code, and then switching over to LED lights.
Yep.
Those sorts of things. So that envelope, and then the systems of the house.
Cool.
Yeah. That's like the first thing to think about. Yeah. I think.
And
that's what I think about.
Are we talking? So you said more insulation. So if you're doing a full remodel, I'm assuming you're, insulating all the outside walls better, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what type of, this is probably not just the stuff you'd buy from Home Depot, a better R value of, pink stuff you're going to roll up. Right?
Yeah. I think probably now the preferred insulation here in the Valley for really having a tight envelope would be blown cellulose.
Blown cellulose, okay.
So they come in and they can net your house. You would air seal it, so you go around, and some guys use like spray foam. You can use that, but it's preferred to use like an elastomeric caulk, because the spray foam, as your house moves, cracks, and you can let airs go through. Sure. I went to a very fascinating presentation about air sealing, and I learned a lot. And so you can seal your house up, and then, the blown cellulose, it's just shredded newspaper treated with like a borate type anti-flame substance. They net your house, and then they just blow it in and pack it in.
Huh.
And it's pretty cost effective. You can also blow fiberglass in, but fiberglass is kind of gross, and it's just not that good.
Yeah.
You can also use, like my house, I insulated with mineral wool bats because I didn't have that much money and to pay for the blown cellulose guy, but I was able to install that myself, and I did it in a way that was pretty tight. And mineral wool is pretty nice because it's a inert. It doesn't have a paper bat on it. It can't hold mold. It doesn't get moldy and nasty.
Nice. Interesting.
So, and then I wrapped my whole house in 1.5-inch polyiso foam panels, which having a foam outside your house is nice because it eliminates thermal bridging through the studs, which thermal bridging, it just means heat transfer. If you have a stud that goes from your sheetrock to the outside of the wall, heat goes this way, and it can go this way.
Sure. Interesting. And so a lot of this stuff, I mean, obviously you've learned, from physically doing yourself, kind of trial and error. But like we talked about before, you have some certifications and some education on this stuff that very few people around here do. Tell me about that.
So like I said, I started getting into it, and I thought there was an opportunity to maybe help my business side out, and also because I was starting this remodel, I realized I didn't really know what I was talking about, and I don't probably still know that much about what I'm talking about, but
I disagree with that. I think you know a whole lot about what you're talking about.
So like, anyway, I mean, I go hear these people talk at these conferences and events and stuff, and you're like, damn, I have no idea.
Yeah.
People go down the rabbit hole so big. The energy modeling stuff alone is just like,
sure, totally.
And I just wasn't, I had some free time, and I'm always been into like going to school and classes. I've always enjoyed that stuff. And, so I found this company, or I guess it's a nonprofit over in Oregon called Earth Advantage, and they're a third-party certification system. So over there, they would certify your project. They certify, production home builders, guys that are building 500, 800 houses a year. They certify appraisers. They certify real estate agents. They certify design professionals in these different processes, so that there's a real third party. It's not like, you have LEED for the government, which is really expensive, but just a way that to kind of quantify what you're doing and have these trainings. And so I found out about it, and I thought, man, this is awesome. And I had some money and some time. And so I went over to Portland every month for 6 months and got the Sustainable Homes Professional class, which was really interesting for me, especially from the mechanical side of things, because I didn't really understand HVAC, and like it's really complicated in some ways. And so it was really helpful to me to like educate myself so I could make smarter decisions for what I was doing in my own home.
Yeah.
And also so I could read, so when I read some of these articles and things, I could like digest and like know what they're talking about. Like, oh, now I know what, a blower door test is. And I know what, when it says get your house to 2 ACH 50, like I know what that means. And I wasn't getting that just being carpenter guy going to work every day.
Sure.
So it was a good opportunity, and I took the class. I had to do like a project and a presentation and take a test, and I got certified.
Very cool. And I mean, because like I said, I mean, there's nobody else really around with that, like especially in our area, right?
Not really, not that I know of. If they are, I haven't met them, and if they're not registered with Earth Advantage. The closest affiliates would be over in Bend. They have a little office in Bend, and then they do some stuff down in Southern Oregon. They've tried to come over here. The executive director of Earth Advantage, I think his sister lives here.
Oh, interesting.
But the number one, I mean, you have to have people have to want it, and I think again, it goes back to people aren't marketing. Like they'll say, "Oh, we're Energy Star." Well, that doesn't really mean a whole lot.
Yeah.
Like it's good, but it's not like, it's like we were talking about food, and you're like, "Oh, there's organic food and there's natural food."
Sure.
And you're like, "Well, natural what?" And then there's like, now we have regenerative agriculture. So like, it's not enough to be organic. you've got to be regenerative. That's like the next level of things, you know? And so I think housing has those same, it's like coffee. Now we're on the third wave of coffee. I don't even know what that means, but it sounds like it's better than second and first wave.
Obviously, right? Yeah, progress.
I think people know that. I mean, your house is such a huge investment, and it's such a player in the climate situation, buildings and construction, that I think that it's just overwhelming. And so most people, when they're doing a project, they're so overwhelmed picking out their countertops and what kind of tile they're going to put in their shower.
Sure.
They don't give a shit about what kind of HVAC you're using. They just want to know what it costs.
Yeah. And it works, right? Yep. Cool.
It works.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Totally.
And, so I think I gotta be honest. I've taken the class. I still work with those folks, and, Earth Advantage would like to come over here and do more with the city of Boise and to do classes, but there's no demand for it. And so, which is a little disheartening. I just, it just is what it is, but I can't say that anyone's called me and been like, God, I need you to build me a net zero home, or I need, you're the guy with this advice. And that part has been a little disheartening, but that's life.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, as things progress, and all we can do is, try to help educate people. And like I said, you don't know what you don't know, and I honestly think, I talk to, in what I do, I talk to a lot of people, and what you're talking about right now, most people don't even know they need to know this stuff. Yeah.
Well, they don't, if they're doing fine and making money, like what's the incentive, you know what I'm saying?
Totally.
A lot of it, there's just a lot of, I'm an outsider. I didn't grow up in Boise. I didn't grow up in Idaho. I moved here.
Yeah.
And I would say, just like many places, construction is built on relationships. A lot of those relationships are, long-term, like, hey, I went to high school with this guy and now I'm 50 and I've done his projects and I coached his kid's baseball team. So it's real relationship, or, again, it's driven more by like a marketing thing. You know what I mean? Like, think about people who go live out in the new Dry Creek Ranch subdivision because they want to be on a farm, even though they took over a farm. Whatever, that's fine.
It doesn't feel like being on a farm. It doesn't feel like being on a farm. Yeah.
And then they just put up the same houses, the same code minimum house that like really?
Yeah.
Or like, then you even get into like fire and all these different things of like, man, your house, you have no resiliency.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't want to live out anywhere around here without a metal roof and like stucco or metal or concrete siding.
Yeah.
Especially you're out there, and I know they have the WUI, they have rules for when you're in the foothills, but it's just kind of mind-boggling. Or then you're like, hey, we have this farm and everyone's going to be able to go out into the, foothills and enjoy this beautiful place we live, but we're all going to like drive everywhere and
our house is going to be 5 feet away from like our neighbor's house.
Yeah. And my house is going to be 4,000 square feet. I have, there's 4 people in my family, and we have to have all these different spaces. And that to me is where I think you have to have someone who just kind of gets it. It's like,
for sure. Yeah. And we've talked enough that I'm like you in that, where that's not where I want to live. Obviously people want to live there. That's not for me. I'm not trying to go live.
It's no different with landscape design, where you get someone who comes in and is like, you know what? I want to have all these tropical plants. And you're like, yeah, we can do it, but boy, you're really going to spend a lot of energy.
Yeah, we can do. Yeah. We can do it, but you need to have them inside.
It doesn't make any sense.
Because they're not going to live here at all. Like, you might get it. Yeah. We'll plant them in the summer or whatever, and they're going to die.
Yeah. Then the realtor comes in and is like, oh, there's no resale value in those tropical plants. I don't think you want to do that,
Yeah.
So it's just an education thing, and people have a lot of decisions to make in life. I'm always just surprised how little, I don't want to sound condescending, but like how little effort people really put into their house, especially if you're building a custom home. You're spending $300-400 a square foot for a nice house.
Yeah.
They're using this. Everyone buys the same 2x4s and the same 2x6s and puts it together pretty much the same way.
Right.
And so I think that there are some super high-end houses that are now starting to I was lucky to work on a house last year with another builder, the beautiful house, great builder. And, the client, he's a physician. He's very sharp, knows what he's doing, and has done his homework, had a great design, and like really executed an awesome house.
Nice.
Solar panels, exterior insulation, cellulose, the whole deal. But it's not, those houses make it look like it has to be some sort of exceptional trophy thing.
Sure.
Whereas you can just build the regular production house and just make a couple tweaks. And, especially what they're doing, if you look at what they're doing in production housing in California, Oregon, Washington, those guys already have it figured out. We're talking publicly traded, massive home builders.
Yeah.
And they don't mess around. And they make a couple tweaks in their production line, and boom, that's what they do now. So it's doable.
Yeah. And so like I said, yeah, so it doesn't have to be this, multi-million-dollar house. You don't have to be a doctor to afford it. So on a regular, like I said, a regular production house, from what you're talking about, how much of a, from how it's done now, traditionally, to what you're talking about, how much of a price increase you think there is on the front end?
That's a slippery slope. Sure. And I think when you talk about the construction cost versus the cost of the life of the house,
yeah,
and then also the cost of the house to exist on the planet, like its embodied cost, those are three different costs.
Very different things, yeah.
But I would argue, just anecdotally, that you could do it for not much more money, maybe 5%.
5%.
Yeah, maybe. Because depending on how you build it, the number one thing is don't build a freaking huge house.
Sure. Yeah.
That's the first one.
Sure.
If you want to build a 5,000-6,000 square foot house, you can spend gajillions of dollars and make it energy this and that, but like you still live in a ridiculously big house.
Yeah. That
the most like normal people don't really need.
No.
I mean, I live in 2,000 square feet. Would it be nice to have more room? You betcha. But I would argue that, you can be under 3,000 square feet and have a really efficient home for like the modern family in a way that works, especially if you incorporate the detached garage with the ADU, which I think is, again, money in the bank.
Sure.
Whether it's multi-generational living, you can have the grandparents live there, family, whatever, office. I think there's going to be a big move after all this COVID thing for people who are going to realize, like, I don't really need to go to work every day at the office.
I know I'm realizing that. Yeah. I mean, I'm set up now, and like I can do damn near what I do from the office from right here. And
I think that we still
being around my kids all day and stuff is awesome. It's super awesome.
Yeah, I still think we need the office, because I think I think the honesty is you're not that productive when you're at home and as you would be at work, because you don't have you're not collaborating. And totally. I also own bars downtown where there's a bunch of offices, and so I don't want everyone to stop going to the office.
Right.
So I still need some, but I do think that, people having, side hustle business. So, I think just looking at what you really, if you have the luxury and you're lucky enough to be able to build your own home, custom, let's say.
Yeah.
Like, if you could take that time and really think about what you need, not versus just like what the other houses around you have done, but to really be like, this is what we need. We probably don't need, that many bedrooms, or maybe we have more of a convertible space. Everyone has open floor plans now. I mean, a house that you can live in for a while, instead of like most people, when they can build their first house, a lot of them don't plan on living there very long. Sure. It's like this stepping thing. And so I think if you can just really, if you have that luxury to take just a minute and, try to really get what you want, and then take a look at some of those systems. And if you hire a builder, they should be able to, you should be able to price out some of the things. And some builders will say that it's too expensive because they don't want to do it, because they can't quantify it.
Sure.
And they don't want to try something new because they're like, damn, I'm not going to lose my shirt when I know I can do this one way that's worked for the last 10 years.
And I know how to do it. I know what I'm going to make, and they're going to be happy with it, and I can move on and do it again.
Again, to refer back to like landscaping or even restaurants, it's like you can go to, there's just things that are tried and true. We're going to put 2 fire maples over here. We're going to have switchgrass here and pampas over here. And then we're going to put gravel here, and like done. $5,000.
Bolts and some sod, away we go. Yeah.
But we have a client who's like, I went to this one garden in, pick some town. I really liked it. Like, do you think we could do something like that here? And that's when you're like,
hell yeah, we can do that. Let's get crazy. Yeah.
It might even be cheaper. I don't know.
Without it, yeah. Well, and that's, and like you said, and that's exactly the thing is if you have, I mean, and just like building a home or doing a landscape, yeah, if you're lucky enough to where you're in a spot where, we can really think about this stuff, what you can do, and it's probably not as expensive. I mean, as expensive as people might think. And
it's cheap to figure things out on paper. It's real cheap to figure them out on paper.
Yeah. Well, and that's why we build 3D models and do that stuff. Yeah, moving stuff around digitally is real easy and cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Once it starts, and I can't tell you how many times you probably get involved with stuff like this too, where we get involved with a project where somebody started a landscape project and it got a third of the way done. They're like, oh my god, this isn't what we thought we were getting. The paper, told them, yeah, we'll do this, this, and this. It's going to cost us much. Like, all right, cool, go. And they get into it, and it's not what they wanted or what they thought it was going to be. And then they come to us like, all right, we need to really design this thing, and that sucks. I mean, we're happy to help with that, but I mean, it sucks for them because
they've already paid.
Yeah, they've paid a bunch of time already, and it's not what they want, and we're starting over.
And I think too, when people have a bad experience, this is a real bad thing in construction, or just like the restaurants too. Like all the Yelp reviews are negative. The people who don't have a good time are vocal. And like people who complain about, oh, my contractor sucked and you didn't do this. And yeah, there's bad contractors out there. And like, I'm guilty sometimes not being the best communicator because I just am exhausted and it's very stressful. And like, at some point you just gotta be like, do it. But I think that taking a little bit of the time, and then the homeowners never say like, yeah, well, we talked to a couple of people that seemed pretty organized and dialed in, but wow, they were like 10, 15% more. And you're like, yeah. Because that's what it costs to run that kind of business.
That's what it takes.
They're not getting, you know what I mean? Like
totally.
The wealthiest home builders in our community build some of the shittiest houses because they've got it commodified. And I'm not saying that to be disrespectful. I'm saying because they're like freaking awesome business people, and they have their numbers dialed, and there's no deviation.
Totally.
You don't come in and say like, oh, actually, the closet, I wasn't thinking it was going to go there. Like, you don't do that. And if
that
you
doesn't
do,
matter. Yeah.
You get nailed with the change.
Yeah.
Whereas I get into situations, I'm like, well, you don't really know what you want. Like, we can just figure it out, but I never can quantify it. Well, that's something I have to work on better is, quantifying for people like, all right, dude, yeah, you want to remodel your basement and you want to try to be net zero. Like, okay, well, you're going to have to pay me some money to figure that out.
Yeah.
Because if I come back, if I spend 50 hours figuring it out for free, and then come back to you and it's 10 grand more than the next guy, you're going to be like, oh, dude, I was going to go with that guy.
Yeah.
That's the hard part. It's a weird business, man. I've picked two really bad ways to make a living, I feel
like. Construction and restaurants, yeah.
They're like inspiring and super fun and like, when it's good, it's good. But sometimes you're just like, damn.
Should have been a lawyer.
I don't know. One of my best clients, he actually called me here. He's an attorney, and that guy works his ass off.
Oh, dude, I have buddies that are attorneys, man, and they work harder and more hours than anybody else.
Oh, yeah.
It's insane.
And I just feel like, and there's something to be said for, especially if you're like a trial attorney. I mean, you're just like arguing with people all the time. Like I have a friend back in Tennessee where I grew up. He's a divorce lawyer. He makes tons of money, so much money. But he's like, dude, every day I just deal with like wreckage, of people's families and like their kids, and he's like, it's terrible.
That sounds awful.
So no, I'm not going to be,
that sounds awful. Well, cool, man. We're just about out of time here. So before we go, tell everybody that's listening and watching how, if they have questions, if they want to, maybe talk to you about a remodel or a new house, how can they find you? Where can they find you online?
Well, if they're on Instagram, as you know, I do love Instagram. And they can hit me up at 2plank. That's TWO_PLANK, and follow me there. And then I have a link to my website, 2plankboise.com. And then my email is 2plankboise@gmail.com.
Perfect.
Pretty straightforward. Or if we were in business, you can come down and have a fine German beer with me at Prost, or at Northend Pizza, or at Matlack's. But that's on hiatus for the time being.
Hopefully soon, man. We'll all be back there drinking German beers.
Never in my wildest. I mean, we were like, okay, we can get through another recession. Our company has survived a recession before, but I never thought the government would come out and be like, yeah, you guys can't go out for like 2 months.
Yeah,
you're forbidden.
Yeah. Having things slow down is one thing. Having it totally stop is a whole other thing for sure.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Crazy. Well, TJ, hang in there, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it.
You bet, man. We'll talk soon.
See ya.
Okay.